Hey kids, it's Mr. Flyer here, hope you're well and welcome along to another Mr. Flyer video. This one's going to be a little bit different in that it's one of my comparison videos where I take a look at two bikes and compare them side by side. In this case I'm going to be looking at this, the brand new Tiger 660 from Triumph, brand new for 2022, and I'm going to be comparing it with this bike, another bike that was brand new for the 2022 model year. This is the Yamaha Tracer 7, a similar bike in many ways, a sort of a middleweight do-it-all, a commuter bike if you like, or maybe a first big bike. Very competitive segment this, and these bikes very much going head to head. So if you're interested in this sort of machine, stick around, stay tuned, this video's for you. Alright, so I will just start off by saying if you want to see a full review of either of these bikes, then do go and check out my review videos that I've already posted on my channel. I'll put a link in the corner to each of the reviews. On those I go through, you know, in detail what the bikes are like to ride, the specifications, pricing, all that sort of thing. So do go and check those out. Don't go watch them now, do that after you've seen this video, because what I'm going to do in this video is actually look at each bike side by side, jumping off of one onto the other, and go through some of the basic things about the bikes and comparing them directly for things like comfort, engine, handling, looks, all that kind of thing. Okay, so let's start by jumping off the bikes then, having a look around them and see how they compare from a styling point of view.
Alright, the Tiger Sport 660 then, styling wise, I think it is a handsome looking bike. What do you think? I think it looks pretty good. It reminds me, as I've said before, of my old Tiger 1050 Sport, particularly the front fairing on here. I don't think it looks quite as modern as the Tracer 7, which is a little bit more unusual looking, but I think this is quite handsome. But I do think from a straightforward looks point of view, the Tracer probably has it for me. But the build quality on the Triumph is absolutely beautiful. It's got quality, even things like the plastics seem like they're good quality, and they're, you know, they're nicely done. There's nothing that feels trumpery on it. I'm not quite sure about some of this sort of lettering on the tank here. I think it might have been better to leave that off maybe, but the paint seems lustrous. The build quality is typical Triumph these days. I mean, the welds and stuff on the frame are absolutely beautiful. Really nice. I quite like the styling on the exhaust, although it's got this ugly Euro 5 box underneath, which many bikes have these days. The back end I think looks nice, although I'd definitely get myself a tail tidy. I'd then get a load of crud thrown up on my back probably, but I think it would definitely benefit from that. But yeah, overall I think it is a handsome looking bike, but possibly, as I say, for me the Tracer 7 edges it. I do like the mudguard on here as well. Anyway, let's take a look at the Tracer 7 then. Alright, Tracer 7 then, from a styling point of view, let's take a look at this bike. I actually think that the Tracer 7 is the better looking bike of the two, it has to be said. I do like the front of this bike. I just think it looks a bit more modern. It's got a little bit of Panigale or something about it on the front here. I just think it's a really nice front end on here. I like what they've done with these handguards. It looks really modern and up to date. I just think the 660, it's not an ugly bike, but the front just doesn't look quite as nice, does it? In terms of build quality, fit and finish, this Yamaha is just as nice, if not better than the Triumph. I mean, the finishes on the engine and stuff are absolutely beautiful on here. So yeah, really nice bike. I like the exhaust as well, what they've done with it, and this touring seat, although it's an optional extra, of which more later, I think looks great as well. So overall, I think on styling and looks, for me at least, and it's a subjective thing, but for me it's quite a big deal, the Tracer 7 wins over the two.
So the Tiger 660 in terms of comfort is a very nice place to be. Handlebars are nice and wide, seat feels nice and soft to my backside, plenty of room to move around on it as well. It's quite long, so whether you're short or tall you'll find a comfortable spot. And also the front of the bike, the fairing area, is quite large with this screen as well, so quite well protected from the weather. In terms of your riding position, you are upright, slightly leant forward, but nothing at all sporty. I find it a very comfortable place to be. Bike manufacturers seems to have got comfort sorted these days on this sort of bike, don't they? You can ride for hours on end on the Tiger 660 and no end of comfort. Okay, so how about comfort on the Tracer 7? Well, superficially they both feel very similar actually. The riding position on the Tracer 7 and the Tiger Sport 660 pretty much the same. What I would say is the windscreen's not quite as effective on the Tracer 7. It's great in terms of adjustment, it's just this one handle that moves it up and down, but I don't know if it's because it's cut out the sides or whatever, but you still seem to get quite a bit of air on you. Handlebars similarly positioned, and your riding position is nice and upright as well. Nice comfortable place to be. A little bit of sport on this particular Tracer 7 because I've got the comfort seat on here, which is an optional extra, so maybe it's a bit of a unfair comparison, but both bikes very comfortable places to be, very similar in that respect. The engine on the Tiger 660 is an absolute peach. Of course, it's the Triumph Triple. I always find these the best of both worlds. Nice and smooth when you're giving it the beans, and plenty of grunt low down as well. Kind of the best of both worlds between the grunt of the twin and the smoothness of a 4. And Triumph are kind of the masters of the Triple. This engine, the 660, of course, derived from the engine that started off in the Daytona as a 765, then went to the Streets Triple, and is now in the Trident as well. So yeah, the engine on the 660 Sport is an absolute peach. I love it. So the engine on the Tracer 7, very different character to the Tiger Sport 660 because it's a twin, of course. That means it does feel like it's got a little bit more grunt low down, which is nice, and it also has a bit more, should we say, character, by which I mean there's a few more vibrations. So if you like smooth engines and you don't want any vibrations at all, then go for the Tiger Sport 660, which is the nicer engine as far as I'm concerned. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this engine though, and when I say there's more vibration, there's no vibration that's going to annoy you whatsoever, just enough to let you know that you're on a motorcycle. So it's not a vibrating engine on here, it's just I happen to prefer the character of a Triple over a twin, but both peachy engines. But for me, the 660 has it. So the gearbox on the 660 Sport, nice and smooth. I've had this bike for about a week now. I don't think I've ever had a false neutral or had trouble finding neutral. I describe it as nice and slickable. You can get a quick shifter as an accessory on the bike, but as standard it doesn't come with one. But the gearbox itself is lovely, and allied to that, the clutch on here, lovely and light. Triumph have got the clutches sorted now on their bikes. They have these what they call assist and slipper clutch, so you can actually be quite hand-fisted if you want, and the bike isn't going to lurch around. So top marks on the Tiger Sport 660 for the gearbox and clutch, really nice. Okay, gearbox on the Tracer 7 then, how does that compare? Well, I have to say, it's very nice indeed. I would also describe this as stickable, and in the time that I've been riding this bike I haven't had a single false neutral. It's a very nice gearbox indeed. I don't think there's any quick shifter option available for this, but that's not a big deal on a bike like this. So gearbox is nothing really to choose between the two bikes. Clutch on here, if anything, feels a little bit heavier than the Triumph, but it's not a heavy clutch. It's certainly not something that you'd be worried about. So as far as gearbox is concerned and clutch, I'll give it a dead heat between the Tracer 7 and the Tiger Sport 660. Let's look at handling and suspension on the Tiger Sport 660 then. As it comes from the factory, I would say the suspension is set on the softer side, which is a good thing for this sort of bike, because if you're going to spend a lot of hours in the saddle, then you want it to be a comfortable place to be. I've already said it's a comfortable bike in terms of riding position, but in terms of the suspension setup, it's very comfortable as well. Handling, it feels just very, very light, and on roads like this, these little back roads, little B roads, you can just chuck it about. The handling is really great on here. I mean, these bikes are sometimes then fairly called do-it-alls, aren't they? And that kind of implies boring, but in no way would I say the Tiger 660 is a boring bike. For thrashing it around these back roads, taking in these sort of bends, it's an absolute hoot. But yeah, suspension and handling, once again, Tiger Sport 660, right up there. Handling and suspension on the two bikes is very similar actually, so I'm back on the Tracer 7 now. And I suppose this has an advantage in that the suspension on this is adjustable. If you look at the top of the forks there, I don't know if you can just see the adjuster. So there is a degree of adjustment available on here that you haven't got on the Tiger Sport 660. But out of the box, the Tracer 7 I would say is in what I call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too soft, it's not too hard. It's just right. It's not all wallowy, but I'm not being thrown off the seat on the bumps either. And this is a pretty rough road, which is why I come along this one to do this bit of the test. So suspension wise, I think the Tracer 7 has it, and from a handling point of view, again, not a lot to choose between them. Once you get around these twisties, both bikes feel very lightweight. This again is nice and flickable, changes direction easily, feels nice and light. So I think from a handling point of view, not really a lot in it, but maybe the Tracer 7 just wins on that particular category because it's got the adjustable suspension. So the controls and instrumentation on the Tiger Sport 660, once again, it's going to score highly. The controls feel nice and quality, nothing too complicated on here. You've got these nice button controls to get through the various features and functions on the TFT, which is easy to use. and then the TFT itself on here I think is one of the better Triumph ones. It's very similar to that on the Trident, which I raved about. It's very clear, it's got everything you need on it. It makes logical sense to me, and it's straightforward to use. So for me, controls and instrumentation on the Tiger Sport 660, again, it's difficult to see how it can score higher. I'm quite smitten by them actually. Controls and instrumentation on the Tracer 7, well, nice and simple again. If anything, it's even simpler than the Tiger Sport 660. The switchgear is nice and positive and feels nice and high quality. Perhaps it even feels better quality actually, the switchgear, than the Triumph. The display itself isn't quite as good. It's got everything you need, proper fuel gauge and so on, but it is just monochrome LCD, whereas that Tiger Sport one just looks a little bit modern and more up to date with the colour TFT as well as the LCD as well. So I think on controls and instrumentation, the Tiger Sport 660 probably has it.
So cards on the table then. If it were my money, which one would I buy out of the Tracer 7 and the Tiger Sport 660? Well, I have to say, it's a really close one to call, really tough. And I've agonised over this over the last couple of weeks since I've been riding these bikes. And I keep flipping between one and the other. I think if I have to say out of which one I would go for, I would probably go for the Tiger Sport 660. That is mainly because I absolutely love the triple engine on it, and I'm a bit of a Triumph fanboy. I just found that bike a little bit more, well, there's a clue in the title, a little bit more sporty when you rode it. It was just great fun to throw around the back lanes. That is not to say the Tracer 7 isn't though. The Yamaha is a beautiful bike as well, and I have to say I much prefer the looks of the Yamaha, and to me, although it's shallow, how a bike looks is a big part of the buying decision. So actually, you know, for a long time I thought I'd probably go for that. So it's a very, very close one indeed, but people always want to know which side of the fence you fall. So for me, I'd take the Triumph Tiger Sport 660.
So there we are, that's my comparison of the Tracer 7 and the Tiger Sport 660. Hope you found that of interest. As you can gather, they're both excellent bikes, and you wouldn't be disappointed with either of them. My advice to you would be, if you can, get a test ride on both and go with the one you like the look of. As I say, you will not be disappointed with either. So do let me know if you think there's anything significant I've missed in my comparison of the Triumph Tiger Sport 660 and the Yamaha Tracer 7. They are both excellent bikes, and they're very difficult to choose between because they are very, very similar bikes actually in lots of ways. I've loved my time with both the bikes, and whichever you go for, really, you're going to be happy. But as I say, do let me know in the comments below if there's anything you think I've missed, because lots of people that are considering buying these sorts of bikes do watch YouTube videos, read the comments and so on, so it builds up as a useful resource. So I hope you enjoyed that little video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if it's the first time you've been to my channel. It'd be fantastic to see you again on the next one. Alright, look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Listen and Fly. Cheerio.